Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to episode 52 of Monorail Memoirs. Today we'll be discussing the worst part of Run Disney. Lauren, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. I've just got back from a run and the heavens have just opened, so I'm feeling really smug because it was fine when I was out.
Well, it's about 25 degrees here, which in Fahrenheit is something like 70 odd, maybe low 80s. And it's quite pleasant. There's a few clouds in the sky, but I'll deal with it. I'm not running today, though, so I've got the day off, which is nice. Nevertheless, speaking of running, Run Disney then. Run Disney, we have done vlogs about this. You'll be able to look at them if you wish. I think what's interesting about it is the amount of people who do it who I would say aren't runners or aren't athletes of any sort. There aren't many people who will sign up for races in the regular world without being a runner. Although I feel there's an awful lot of the Run Disney community are not runners.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's lovely for it to be so inclusive and everybody to be able to give it a go. And to be able to, just do something active, get up and about in one of their favorite places. I think it's great. But yeah, it's not the typical race environment.
No, and this video is gonna sound like a list of gripes and complaints, of which it kind of is because it's the worst part, right? But I think overall, it's fair to say that we enjoyed our time doing it and looking at doing more in the future. But the purpose of this is to discuss the worst part. So I want to start off with one of my things that I found really sort of frustrating. There are far too many sections of the course where it gets really narrow.
Yeah, definitely.
The reason why I say that's one of the worst parts is because there's the general rule that the slower you are, the further on the right hand side of the course you go in order to allow fast people to come past you. But if you bottleneck, especially at the beginning of it, the marathon was different because you spread out over time. The 10 mile to a lesser degree, but on the smaller races, the 5K and the 10K, the density getting funneled through some of these points. When we ran through Hollywood Studios, towards Galaxy's Edge, where the Monsters University is being put up, the walkway was split with cones down the middle, and you were sandwiched in. That for me, you're never gonna, or at least this is not a course to set a PB on. It never has been, at least because of the corral status and the heat and things like that. But I'm not a fan of how tight the course gets at times.
Yeah, definitely. And also that depends on people actually sticking to the rules as well. Kind of being one or two abreast. Even at those really kind of bottlenecky bits, even being two abreast is really, really tricky. And then also keeping to the right, it's really quite annoying if people don't do that, and it does ruin your experience a little bit. But I'll kind of come on to that. But yeah, there were some bottlenecks that were really, really tricky, especially in the parks, because let's face it, it's not set up for that. It's set up for one kind of walkway of people walking. It's not set up for like dodging and weaving and running and all that sort of stuff. So they do as well as they can do with the kind of layout that they are handed. But yeah, I would definitely say that it is frustrating. And ironically, the best bits in terms of racing are on the highways, because you don't have to worry about that because it's massive and it's vast. The hardest bits in terms of those bottlenecks are at the exciting bits.
Yeah, and I do find that not all, but a lot of the bottlenecks come from when you actually re-enter or exit a park, because you're coming in through a service road, through an access gate, what have you. So that's where it really narrows, because it's not designed to have such a large flow of people come through. So for me, that's one of the things where I'm like, I'm just not a fan about that. And I do think, I think about the other races that I've done. Some of them have been quite narrow. Some have been trail races. I do think that's different because the volume of people is far less dense than it is compared to this. I mean, these events are tens of thousands of people for a 5K, which is unheard of anywhere else.
Yeah, definitely. And the volume of people as well who walk, which is fine, if that's what you want to do in your race, that's fine. But then that creates for the further back corrals even worse of a bottleneck, because I understand that people are being, set off a couple of minutes apart, which in theory should make kind of everyone move a similar sort of distance. But if you've got half a corral of walkers, then of course the runners are going to catch up to them. It's just going to happen.
I agree, and actually that brings me on to my next point. One of the criticisms that runDisney has faced is that it is so hard to get tickets to the events, and that is true. And one of the things they've done is they've opened up more 5K and 10K slots, which is great. The problem, I use inverted commas, the problem with opening up those more slots is the course itself has not got bigger. It's by definition a set distance. And so in the same problem that Walt Disney World faced, especially pre-pandemic, which was there was an increasing number of visitors, there's an increasing number of people, but the amount of space was still the same. It started to feel quite crowded. Now, the Dopey Challenge in January was way more crowded than this was, but even so, I felt that, especially standing in the corral, we would deliberately stand at the back of the corral, so you're not suckered into the first bit because it doesn't really matter. But there were times where I was like, there is an uncomfortable amount of people running now.
Yes, definitely. And when you kind of catch up to the next corral and then like start to overtake the next corral, you then finding it's getting even worse because there is more of a volume of people, because the people from behind have caught up, the people from in front have slowed down, and you've got that corral. So you've got like three sets of corrals within one area, and it is a lot.
It is, and I'm not necessarily. I don't blame people for wanting to do it. I mean, heck, I'm by no means the fastest runner in the world, so I completely understand. But it does create source of sort of frustration, I think is the best way of putting it, when you do get these bottlenecks, in part because of the course design, but also in part because of the number of people doing it. One of the other things that I wanted to bring up in terms of one of my frustrations, and I accept nobody can help this, it's just how it's done, but getting up at 3 a.m. does get a bit tiresome.
Yeah, especially when we were only there for a week. We were trying to maximize our time and do everything do a lot of the things that we wanted to do. Obviously, you can't do everything. And the more that we did during the day, we were very mindful that then the next day we would have another race to do, and we needed to get up at 3 a.m. So we couldn't really stay for the fireworks, or if we were going to be absolutely shattered. Would we have a nap? There's just so many different logistics that you need to think about when you're getting up for a 5 a.m. race, as opposed to an 11 a.m., 10 a.m. race. Even things down to like fueling. So, for the 5K, it doesn't really matter. Because obviously you're not going to try and smash any PBs or anything like that. 5K is a 5K. But for like the 10 mile especially, I'm really quite particular with my fueling. And I couldn't do that because I didn't have enough time to do that. And that's kind of throws you off kilter a little bit. So I'd definitely say if you are training for a runDisney race, you need to try and train your routine as well to fit those 3 a.m. wake-ups.
Yeah, they were one of my biggest gripes, but I also accept that, especially in springtime, you can't run in the middle of the day. So this isn't necessarily anybody's fault. It's not something that can be corrected, but for me, it's still one of the worst parts. Is that getting up at that time in the morning, continually for different people are at different parts of their training journey and have different objectives. But I think about 5K, 10K, it's not far, and so I think. But I look at that, I'm just like, I'm getting up at 3 a.m. to do this. I find it's quite funny because, especially for the 5K, less of the 10, especially for 5K, by the time that we've left the hotel, got and parked, walked to go through security, done security, walked to the corral itself, waited in the corral, from the corral going through to the actual start line, starting the race. That's nearly 5K in itself. It's not quite, but it's over a mile easily in itself. And B, the time difference. I'm like, from getting out of my car to starting this race is longer than I'll spend running. It's like,
yeah, I think that is one of my main gripes that I kind of wanted to pick up on. Is there is absolutely no other way to do it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not looking for a solution here, but it is just a bit of a moan that actually we had to get up at 3:30 and we were staying on property. It literally took us 10 minutes to get there for us to set off at almost 5:30.
Yeah.
getting there 2 hours early is just crazy for me, you know. And I've done some big races, you know, 36,000 people, 17,000 people. Like, I've done big races, but you've never needed to be that prepared. And as you say, it's the walk from the car through security, which it didn't even cross my mind that we'd have to go through security, but it totally makes sense because we're going through Disney. You know, I'm glad that we're doing security, don't get me wrong. But that's just a kind of added factor that I didn't even think about. And then just they have you kind of like snaking around, because when you park up, you're like, oh, it's just there. Like, it's literally just across the way. But because you have to snake so much, you've done so many like steps before you even get to your corral. It's crazy.
I honestly believe that from the car park to security to the corral to the start line, and then from the finish line back through to the car, I think that could actually be 5K in itself.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
And then you're like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm now walking the thing that I've just ran.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I've buried the lead slightly here, because the biggest gripe I have, for me, the worst part of runDisney is the cost.
Yeah.
We spend, well, so Dopey now for the 26 registration for the 27 year, $800 a person for 4 races.
Yeah.
What we did was about $450 a person for 3 races, one of which again was a 5K, and it's like, oh, that's so much money. That for me is the worst part. And we can talk about how the registration system is broken. I don't have a solution. I'm sorry, I don't. But the registration system is broken. But nevertheless, the worst part is still the cost, because it's not just the cost of the race. This isn't your local park run. This isn't, even if you do a big marathon nearby, you go to and from in a day. This is you actually have to go there. Most people will stay on property, but not all. You actually have to go there. You do the event, and people want to do the theme parks as well. So there's the all-encompassing cost, but then there's specific cost for just the runDisney portion. Where does it end? Because you're still going to have thousands of people per event who are disappointed that they weren't able to get tickets.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, we were in that boat like a month or so ago. We tried to get Dopey tickets for this next year, 27, and it sold out within like the hour. We were in the queue, and it wasn't even an hour gone by, and it said Dopey sold out. That sold out. It shows, unfortunately, that the demand for this is so much that it's like, when does the price get so big that the numbers start to fall? And I'm worried anytime soon. So those numbers,
me neither. And actually, this is even outside of runDisney. The attendance at Walt Disney World is still lower than pre-pandemic levels. Pre-pandemic, it was about, I'm talking just the Magic Kingdom here, okay? It was about 20 to 21 million attendees per year in about 2018, 2019. Now it's about 17.5 million. So there's been about 2.5 million people fewer, but they're making more money. Yeah. Because what they're doing is, by increasing the prices, by making the experiences, add-ons between Genie Plus and what have you, by doing all of this, they are ensuring that the target market is no longer the working and middle classes. It is the upper middle class and the upper class. And whilst I appreciate it, the Americans don't necessarily have the same class system that we do, what this does prove is that people who would used to go once a year, once every 2 years, are now only going once every 5 years, once every 10 years, some cases once in a lifetime. And runDisney is slowly becoming that, as more and more people are interested in running in general. Running has taken a huge boom since 2020, since the pandemic. Running has taken a huge boom. And the desire to do things at Disney is only as strong as it's ever been. You combine those two together, the target market is increasing, the number of people who want to do it is increasing, and it also means that they can increase the prices. And for me, the worst part of runDisney is the cost.
Yeah, definitely. And especially, I know that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago about the t-shirts and how they're really good quality, the medals, how they're really good quality. Yes, you are getting stuff for your money. It's not that we're saying that the quality of things isn't there and it's all, just kind of what am I actually getting for my money. It is just the fact that, like, it's like $100 for a 5K race. Like, that is crazy to me, you know. And in the UK, I know that our ticket prices are much lower than in the US. We didn't really realize this until I was booking races, you were booking races, you know, and I was spending markedly less than you for, you know, similar distances and that sort of thing. You know, like, for example, Manchester Marathon, that's it's one of the UK's kind of biggest marathons. It's quite a big spectacle. That was only about £60. You know,
it's
for a whole marathon.
It's about $85-90. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's for a whole marathon. And then when you think about a 5K being over $100, you're like, flipping heck. That is.
Yeah, but it's that expensive because of where it is, isn't it? It's not because, I mean, there are plenty of 5Ks in the US that don't cost that. But you're right. I do think that the you know, Run Disney as an organization, as a business, is having increasing demand, and the supply. Whilst the 5K and 10Ks now have more races, and the supply is actually dwindling because the races in California aren't happening this year, for example. So supply is actually going down, demand is increasing, and so they can easily increase the costs to the consumer because there's still enough people that want to do it, which is frustrating. Lauren, I've given my worst part of Run Disney. What's your worst part of Run Disney?
So I was going to kind of go with the cost as well, because it is a lot of money, but I think there's a lot of actually waiting around, a lot more than kind of a usual race, I think, personally, because obviously we touched on it before. You kind of get into the car park like an hour and a half maybe before you even start the race, and there's not anything to do, you know. It's not like they put entertainment on or anything. Well, I mean, they kind of do put an entertainment on, but you are just kind of watching a screen for a large part of that, and you just kind of stood, and when you stand you get cold. Yes, it is, you know, springtime, so it wasn't too cold, but you know, there was still a little bit of a chill in the air before you started running, and there was just kind of a whole lot of nothingness. It was almost like hurry up and wait, and I hate nothing more than hurry up and wait. You know, you need to get through, you need to keep going, you need to get to your corral. Now you need to wait for an hour, and it's just like, I'm just stood in a car park at 4 a.m. waiting, and it just feels really kind of like, what am I actually doing?
No, honestly, I get it. I really do. The first time that I did the 5K for Dopey, because I didn't know, I got there early. I was at the front of the corral, and I was literally stood around for about an hour and 45 minutes before we even moved. And I was like, what am I doing? So, yep, lessons learned, which is why we went a little bit later. And even then, there was still a lot of standing around. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy it, and I will do Run Disney again. But these have been our thoughts of what we think are the worst part of Run Disney. If you've done it before, please let us know what you think. And until next time, please stand clear of the doors. Bye, everybody.